Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law.
Uh,
You've been asking about the latest buzz in the market, that classic head-to-head leasehold versus freehold properties. We've dived deep into the recent numbers and expert opinions to bring you the insights you need.
Hi, everyone. I'm Serene, and I'm happy to be here to unpack these trends with you.
Exactly. For this deep dive, we're laser-focused on how the prices of new launch and resale leasehold and freehold condos have been moving, especially in the past few years. We've got transaction data, expert analysis,
Yeah, lots to dig into.
and our goal is simple, to make sense of it all for you as you navigate the Singapore property scene. Okay, let's dive straight into new launch condos. What's the big picture? How have leasehold and freehold been performing?
Well, what's fascinating, Damien, is that in the initial years after launch, we're talking less than a decade, new leasehold condos have, often shown stronger price gains than their freehold counterparts.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
It really comes down to the initial outlay. They typically enter the market at a lower price point, on average about 15 to 20% less than a comparable freehold.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Smaller capital commitment, so any appreciation looks bigger percentage-wise.
Exactly. Faster gains on that smaller base.
But for you out there thinking about a new condo, remember that fundamentally, whether it's leasehold or freehold at this stage, the quality, the facilities, they're generally on par.
Right. Pretty
No, no.
much, yeah. The core difference is just the tenure itself.
Now, what happens as we look further down the road, we always hear about the long-term stability of freehold.
That's right. If we consider the longer term, the inherent advantage of freehold becomes, well, more pronounced. As a 99-year lease ages, that lack of lease decay for freehold properties becomes a significant factor.
And financing too, I guess.
Yeah, it also tends to make securing financing easier for future buyers of those freehold units.
Right, the ticking clock of the lease can make banks a bit more cautious. Now, an interesting point our research highlighted was that when losses do occur, they tend to be smaller for leasehold compared to freehold. Why might that be?
This raises a crucial point about the, well, financial dynamics. Often, freehold properties, particularly those in prime, sought-after districts, have a much higher total purchase price, the price quantum, as we call it.
Right, a bigger ticket price.
Exactly. So because of this larger base, even a moderate percentage drop in the market can translate to a more significant absolute loss in dollar terms. We saw examples like Fourth Avenue residences, Pollen and Blue, smaller percentage losses compared to bigger drops like Ascent at 456 or 8 St. Thomas.
So higher entry ticket, potentially bigger absolute downside if things go south. Food for thought.
Definitely. So for you considering a high-end freehold, remember the flip side of potentially high gains is, well, the risk of larger absolute losses in a downturn.
Got it. Now, geographically, are there any specific areas where leasehold or freehold new launches tend to perform differently?
Absolutely. Leasehold new launches have shown particularly strong performance in the outside central region, or OCR. Districts like 23, 28, 25, they've seen good traction.
And why is that? HDB upgraders.
Likely fueled by that lower initial price, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes these options very appealing to HDB upgraders who might find freehold prices in more central areas just out of reach.
Makes perfect sense.
So if you're an HDB upgrader looking for a new condo, leasehold in these OCR districts might offer a sweet spot affordability and potential growth.
More value for money in those suburban areas with a leasehold. What about the core prime districts then? District 10, for example.
In contrast, yeah, in Prime District 10, freehold new launches have actually demonstrated higher average gains compared to leasehold options in the same area.
Ah, so the prestige factor kicks in there.
It suggests that in those most coveted locations, the prestige and, long-term security associated with freehold command a premium right from the start. So for you targeting those top-tier addresses, freehold seems to hold its value more firmly in the new launch phase.
Okay. And what about the type of freehold property? Anything standing out?
Here's where it gets really intriguing. Our data indicates that freehold boutique condos, those with fewer than 50 units, have, well, generally underperformed.
Really? Why is that? Lower volume.
Could be a few factors. They're often higher per unit price due to exclusivity, possibly higher maintenance fees spread across fewer owners, and yeah, lower transaction volumes making them less liquid. It's also possible that buyers of these very exclusive properties aren't solely focused on maximizing financial returns,
Right. Maybe more of a lifestyle purchase.
Could be. So if you're drawn to the exclusivity of a small freehold development mainly as an investment, it's worth noting these performance trends.
Good point. Exclusive doesn't always mean better returns. Okay, let's pivot now to the resale market. We've got data from an ERA study looking at condos near MRT stations. What are the key trends there?
What's quite remarkable in the resale market is the narrowing gap in profitability between freehold and leasehold. This study looked at transactions between 2015 and 2024 near 9 different MRT stations.
Okay.
Back in 2019, freehold resale condos had a significantly higher median profit compared to leasehold. But by 2024, that difference had shrunk dramatically,
How dramatically?
from over $118,000 down to just $30,000 in median profit difference in just 5 years.
Wow, that's a huge compression. What's driving this convergence?
Several factors, it seems. Firstly, we're seeing higher transaction volumes in well-located leasehold developments. That suggests strong demand, pushing up prices.
Right. More churn, more price discovery.
And secondly, there are just more leasehold condos now, especially in mature states with great amenities and, crucially, near MRT stations. Those are highly desirable in resale.
Like which ones? Any examples?
Oh, projects like Treasure at Tampines, Jadescape, prime examples of large leasehold developments with robust activity and good profits for sellers.
So location and convenience are becoming powerful equalizers, even for leasehold.
Absolutely. So for you looking at resale, a well-located leasehold near transport might offer surprisingly competitive returns compared to maybe a freehold further out.
But are there still pockets where freehold resale clearly leads? Prime areas, maybe?
Yes, definitely. Freehold resale condos in central locations, especially near Outroom Park and Great World MRT stations, they still command significantly higher median profits compared to leasehold in those same prime spots.
Okay, so in the core central region, freehold still has that edge.
Seems so. In those highly central, sought-after districts, the inherent value and scarcity of freehold land still translate to a strong premium in resale.
Makes sense. Limited supply, persistent high demand. Okay, let's zoom out island-wide price gap trends. Orange T group data. What's the big picture over the last decade looking at median price per square foot?
Indeed. This is quite stark. Back in 2014, freehold condos had a considerably higher median POF across the island, about 20.7% more than leasehold.
Right, the traditional wisdom.
But fast forward to 2024, and this trend has completely reversed. Leasehold condos now command a median PF that is roughly 3.7% higher than freehold.
A complete flip. That's massive. What's behind this dramatic shift?
The data strongly suggests leasehold condos have just seen much more significant price growth over the decade. We're talking nearly 66% surge for leasehold,
Wow.
compared to a more modest, though still decent, 33% increase for freehold.
So it points to a real shift in what buyers are prioritizing, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So what are these evolving priorities? Why are leasehold condos now commanding a higher PF on average?
Our sources indicate a growing emphasis among homebuyers on convenience and accessibility. They seem increasingly willing to consider or even prefer a leasehold property if it offers better proximity to MRT stations, malls, schools.
And the cost of cars probably plays a role.
Very likely, yes.
Right.
The high cost and hassle of car ownership in Singapore fuels demand for well-connected homes, regardless of tenure. Accessibility seems to be a major factor pushing up the value of well-situated leaseholds.
It sounds like convenience is a major currency in today's market, potentially outweighing the freehold allure for many. But surely, not all buyers think the same way. Different segments must view tenure differently.
That's a critical distinction, yes. High net worth individuals often still prioritize freehold, especially in those prime districts we mentioned.
For legacy planning, long-term hold.
Exactly. It's often about long-term wealth preservation, legacy planning, the intrinsic value of owning land outright, that sort of thing.
Makes perfect sense for that multi-generational view. What about buyers in the mass market segments, OCR buyers?
For mass market buyers, especially looking in the OCR, affordability is often the primary driver, right? They might also have a shorter to medium-term investment horizon.
So leasehold fits the bill better there.
It makes well-located leasehold options very attractive, a more accessible entry point. However, in prime districts, leasehold might be a harder sell to this group because there are often more freehold choices available within a similar price range anyway.
So it really circles back to individual circumstances, financial goals, time horizons, all that.
Precisely.
Now, looking ahead, what are the longer-term considerations? Lease decay must be the big one for leasehold.
It's the undeniable long-term factor. Over the very long term, as that 99-year lease runs down, these properties are generally expected to depreciate. It affects marketability, financing for future buyers.
Whereas freehold doesn't have that clock ticking.
Exactly. Freehold properties don't face this issue, which contributes to their long-term value retention potential.
That's the fundamental trade-off, isn't it? Stronger gains early on, maybe with leasehold, but the enduring security of freehold? What about land supply? Does that play a role?
Absolutely. We've seen limited new freehold land coming onto the market, partly due to fewer successful en bloc sales.
Right.
Meanwhile, the government continues to be the main source of new land through government land sales, which are mostly leasehold sites. This limited supply of new freehold options could potentially support their long-term value, scarcity value.
Scarcity could definitely enhance freehold's appeal long-term. Now, even with these broad trends favoring leasehold BF growth lately, are there specific situations where freehold can still outperform?
Yes, even with that overall trend, there are scenarios where freehold can shine. For instance, if the surrounding leasehold condos in an area are getting older and there aren't many new leasehold projects launching nearby.
Less competition.
Exactly. A freehold property can become more appealing due to a lack of newer, comparable leasehold competition. Areas like Laurent Chuan, parts of Katong, they've been cited as examples.
Interesting. So local market dynamics matter a lot. What else might tip the scales for freehold?
Another key situation is price disparity. If an older freehold condo is priced significantly lower than new leasehold launches in the same area.
A value proposition.
Exactly. Savvy buyers might spot that, leading to strong appreciation for the freehold as it represents better long-term value at maybe a lower initial price. Think the Cowros in Lentor, Blossoms at Woodley, One Leicester, those were mentioned.
That really highlights doing your homework, looking beyond just the tenure label.
Absolutely.
And are there certain areas where freehold just traditionally holds strong, regardless of broader shifts? Affluent areas?
Definitely. In traditionally affluent, desirable areas like Bukit Timah, Thompson, Tanglin, the East Coast, freehold often performs consistently well. There's just that long-standing preference among buyers there for perpetual ownership, legacy assets.
So location still reigns supreme, and in those prime enclaves, freehold remains the gold standard for many. Okay, we focused a lot on tenure, but it's crucial to remember other factors influence value, right?
Absolutely vital for listeners to remember. Things like MRT proximity, good schools, shops, URA transformation plans for the area, even the unit layout and size. These
Right.
often play a much more critical role in profitability than just freehold versus leasehold.
Couldn't agree more. A well-connected leasehold with great facilities might easily beat a poorly located freehold. What about en bloc potential? Is freehold always the more attractive target for developers?
Well, there's that common perception, right? Freehold is better because developers avoid lease top-up costs. But the reality is more nuanced.
How so?
En bloc success really hinges on plot ratio, location, land size, neighborhood desirability. Tenure is just one piece. A well-located, underutilized leasehold site can still be a very attractive target.
So not solely about freehold status for en bloc. And finally, a sobering reminder about government land acquisition.
Yes, it's important to understand, under Singapore's Land Acquisition Act, the government can acquire even freehold land if needed for national development. Compensation is paid at market value, but yeah, even freehold isn't absolute immunity.
Right. Important context. Okay, Serene, let's bring it all together. What are the key takeaways for our listeners navigating this leasehold versus freehold debate?
Okay, in summary, for potentially quicker capital gains, especially with lower initial investment, well-located leasehold, particularly new launches, can be compelling.
But for the long game,
But if the focus is long-term wealth preservation, generational wealth, enduring value, freehold remains a strong contender. Crucially, location and amenities are increasingly powerful drivers for both types.
and the main message.
Perhaps the most vital takeaway is move beyond the simple freehold versus leasehold label. Analyze individual property attributes against your specific goals, risk tolerance, and long-term plans. Don't use outdated assumptions. Look at the data. Look at the specifics.
So as you can see, it's complex. No single right answer. We hope this deep dive into the trends has given you a clearer picture for your property decisions.
The most important thing is aligning your choice with your individual situation, your risk comfort, your plans. Don't just follow conventional wisdom. Dig into the specifics of each property and the market dynamics.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to ponder. Considering these trends, what are the absolute non-negotiables for your ideal property in Singapore? Think beyond just tenure. What truly matters for your lifestyle, your finances, your future. Thanks for tuning in to Singapore Property Talk Law.
We'll catch you next time.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the Singapore property market.